I want to welcome our listeners to Victory Groove. Victory Groove, remember, we already have the victory. We just need to get our groove back. Today, I've got a very dear friend, and if you've read the book, Run Toward Your Goliaths, you've read about my dear friend, Mr. Dennis Maple. This is my guy. I tell you, we've known each other. In fact, just before I turned on the recorder, we were talking about how long we've known each other. It's been 37 years, Dennis, 37 years.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And it is amazing. You have had an incredible journey. You stuck with corporate America. I veered off. I was in corporate and I veered off, and you and I had a really good talk. I'd love to be able to weave that into our conversation today. But as you well know, Victory Group is about how we leverage our faith in very difficult circumstances. How do we overcome these major, major challenges? And I was just sharing with my friend that I've been very, very selective this season. It's not about the number of episodes. It's really about the quality of the episodes. And in this season, we're talking about finding your rhythm, finding your rhythm. And a lot of folks have to find their rhythm after they had a fall, right? Mm-hmm. How do you get back up? And so Dennis Maple is currently the CEO of Goddard Systems. Look them up, Goddard. And Dennis and I met when we were both at Quaker Oats in 1986. And love for Dennis, please kind of capture, if you can, in a few minutes, your wonderful journey. And then we're going to dig in a little bit and talk about your faith and how you've overcome challenges.
Sure. Well, first of all, Dr. Jones, thank you for inviting me today. I've been looking forward to this opportunity to sit and chat. As you say, we've known each other for 37 years. And in the course of that time, our friendship has grown. Our journeys have taken us in different directions. But I think in the long run, we've actually circled back both to the friendship and to the camaraderie and to the opportunity to share with each other. My career started, as you noted, with Quaker Oats. And so I've been on the corporate side of business all of my career. I spent about 7 years in a variety of sales and management roles at Quaker over a period of about 7 years, as I said. And then I spent 3 years each, approximately at Kraft General Foods and at Pepsi. And then I went to Coors Brewing Company. And I was at Coors Brewing Company in a variety of positions, from sales director, marketing director, internal consultant, vice president, et cetera. And then I wanted to get into the service sector to really take what I had learned on the more traditional B2C marketplaces and then go into the service sector where you had lots of people doing really important work. Perhaps some of these people weren't always as valued as I believe they should have been, but it put me into the realm of education, working with school districts and superintendents and others across North America. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 22 years of my 42 years of professional life. And most recently, in the last 3.5 years, I became chairman and CEO at Goddard Systems. And I'm extremely excited to be here. I'm in education. And this is why I say we've kind of come full circle. You know, I remember that conversation many years ago about your determination to educate, to provide examples, to provide support for others. And you chose the academic path, which at the time we both said was probably a wonderful idea for you to merge that business acumen along with that interest in the world of academia. And so I have now kind of crossed that pond, and I'm on the other side of things with regard to education. And I can tell you it's incredibly satisfying intrinsically in so many other ways as well. And I'm just glad to still be in the game at this age.
Oh man, that's amazing. And don't make us old, D.
Listen, I'm not old, so Jones. You might be old, but I'm not old.
I love it. Oh man, it's just been a joy to watch your career unfold. I've got to tell you about this guy. He is a real encourager in the first place, a very, very strong encourager. And so if you read the book, you remember that moment. There was a moment there. I mean, I was literally on my knees, resetting cornmeal and flour. And I thought, you know what? This is not what I intended to do. I just felt that God had something else for me to do. And I go to my man, Dennis Maple, who was my supervisor at the time. He was district manager at the time. And I said, Dennis, I don't think I'm going to do this anymore. And what I remember you saying, and I have held on to that, you said, Jones, and you've always called me Jones, Jones, right? Don't quit. You're not going to be doing this job forever. And
That's right.
so that encouraged me. And then, building on that, we've got a friend, Jeff Miller, who's the CEO of Halliburton. And
Mm-hmm.
so Jeff is an Aggie alum. He came to our campus and spoke to our students. And similar to what you said, he passed on to these students, don't quit 5 minutes before your miracle. All right. And so when I put those stories together that two dear friends told me, and I now encourage others to do the same, to hang in there, persevere. Because Dennis, right after you said that, it wasn't shortly after you said that, maybe 9 months later, I
Mm-hmm.
got promoted. You promoted me. I got promoted again. Then we ended up from Houston, ended up in Jacksonville, Florida. We
That's
met up
right.
again. We met up
Right.
again.
That's right.
And I remember that. And then I ended up going to Charlotte, North Carolina, and then Greenville, South Carolina, and back. And my dear friend here, you just stayed in there. So you went to PepsiCo. I remember you were at PepsiCo.
Yeah.
Did a lot of great work for PepsiCo. And then you went on, as you said, you went on to Kraft. Now, in the spirit of overcoming giants, I do remember when you ended up going to California. And man, I'll tell you, I left corporate and then became an academic. I was right in the middle of my doctoral program where I couldn't really assist you, and I really regret that. All I could do was try to encourage you,
Sure.
but you had a really difficult circumstance. Of course, you married Donna, and then you all moved, and you had a home in Atlanta. Can you walk us through that really dark time that you had?
Sure. Sure. Eli, I think they say that God gives us tests and adversity because
Mhm,
it brings us closer. It
mhm,
makes us recognize that we always start and should end thinking of how God has put us in these places for a reason. As you may recall, I was married in 1990, and about a year and a half later, while still working at Pepsi, I had an opportunity to go to Kraft General Foods. And what was really exciting about this opportunity is it was going to leverage my direct store delivery experience, my broker management experience, my sales management experience, my actual sales experience. And I really thought that a company the size of Kraft General Foods would be where I would spend my entire career. My first assignment was in San Francisco, and we really got off to a rocky start because although the assignment and professionally was fantastic, as a matter of fact, I went there to start a direct store delivery system for Kraft General Foods in the Briars Knudsen Celeste Pizza realm. And as it turned out, we really just needed good leadership. We had a great distributor, we had a great broker, and really they hadn't been receiving training and support and encouragement and inspiration to represent the brands appropriately. And once we were able to do those things, build some credibility and some camaraderie, that was taken care of. But on the personal side, it was difficult from the very beginning. We owned a home in Atlanta and we were unable to sell it. And so we certainly had not contemplated that would be the case, but nonetheless, it was. And so our house was really a drag on us. We finally got somebody about 8 months into our journey into San Francisco. By this time, we had spent a great deal of time in temporary housing. And so we were exhausted. As it turned out, because the company decided not to open that direct store delivery location, they asked me if I would take on the premier location, which was in Los Angeles. And so Don and I packed up our bags. She was actually pregnant at the time. I still had the house in Atlanta, but my tenants were paying me about every other month. And so they would always be behind. And I was really shocked by that because this guy was a minister. And you would think that of all people in the world, that someone of faith would not put a young family in harm's way the way that these folks did. But nonetheless, my wife and I continued to scrap together what we needed to maintain our home and lifestyle in San Francisco initially, ultimately in LA, and the house in Atlanta. After getting, though, to LA 9 months in, the company decided that they were going to divest. Kraft General Foods was divesting of multiple divisions. And of course, mine was one of those divisions. Unilever came in. They weren't interested in a direct store operation, which is what we were doing in Los Angeles. They wanted to have a warehouse delivered program, an operating model. And so as a consequence, we had 1,000 people in Los Angeles, and we laid off all of them. Anyone that was not in manufacturing, and even some in manufacturing, were laid off. And essentially, my responsibility to handle the majority of that with HR support. And then at the end of it, I actually turned in my key. So now I have a 9-month-old son. I have a wife who's really having a difficult time with postpartum. I have a home in Atlanta, and I have a lease purchase to buy a home in Los Angeles. And I have no job. And because this was really early in my career, we didn't have a lot of savings. And given that I had only been at Kraft for, I don't know, almost 3 years, there really wasn't a lot of severance associated with this change. And so we really had to really pray. We had to really plan. We had to try to be resilient. And in the end, we ended up moving back to Atlanta. I think, Jones, I probably had, I don't know, maybe $15,000, $20,000, and we spent 2/3 of it getting our household goods back to Atlanta and beginning to refurbish our home, which had been destroyed by these people on their way out of the building. Yeah. Really a difficult time. And oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, I wasn't employed. So I was a stay-home dad with my 9-month-old son as my wife rekindled some relationships she had professionally and was able to go back and work, but her income was nowhere near what my income had been. And so it was really, touch and go for a moment. I believe I had maybe 3 months of severance. And show you how God works. It was around this time in that year. So this would have been 1994, around the March time period, when after 3 months of searching, I found the opportunity to join Coors. My severance was 3 months. And so again, as you think about having to get people out of my home who were not paying me, refurbing my home, moving my family without any assistance. When we would move, Jones, we'd have all sorts of helpers, people packing us and moving companies. We had to pay for all of that. And so we weren't sure what the way forward would be, but we continued to be faithful. We continued to pray. And in the end, God provided a way for us. Amen. So after about 3 months of really soul searching, difficult times, we found Coors. And I was there for the next 10 years. And my career has continued without any further interruption since that time. Yeah. But it was a really important lesson from a spiritual standpoint. It just shows you that God can always deliver you no matter what the odds are. From a personal development standpoint, you learn to recognize that with the right plan, with the right support structure around you, particularly my family, my wife, and even my little boy, Cameron, at the time, we were able to get through this and come out on the other side in a much stronger position. And I would say that a lot of what I experienced built itself into my leadership approach, my empathy for others, and my recognition that when these life-changing events occur, you need to be supportive. Yes. And I remember there were a few friends that I thought I could count on that would be there for me. It was almost like I had some disease because I guess everyone said, oh, I don't want to get what he has and end up in the same situation. And that was really disappointing. But for those like you who stood by my side, who were encouraging and supportive, Jones, you were working on your doctorate, man. It wasn't a whole lot you could do, but you could pray. I tell you what, I think praying was probably the best thing that you could have done for Donna and I and Cameron at that time. And again, it worked out just fine. But it was very scary. And, we virtually could have ended up being bankrupt. Yeah. But we were committed. My wife wanted to be back in Atlanta. I wanted her to be in a place that she could recover from her postpartum experience. And I knew that Atlanta was a great place for her to do that. Yeah. And so that's where we journeyed back to.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about there are so many people who are going through layoffs and things that, that can be really, really scary. As you well know, and I left corporate and I became a student again, with very limited income, had a mortgage in the Houston area,
Yeah.
and had, just like you, I had someone who was renting. They were supposed to buy, and I
Yeah.
had to
Yeah. Same
every
thing. Exactly.
every every month I'm begging, please pay that rent, otherwise I'm going to lose that house. I was a student, right?
Right.
And so
Right.
I think about all these folks who have lost jobs and they're in a dark moment. In my book, I have that full circle and it's twisted, and it
Hmm.
really says, look, life is imperfect. All right.
Right.
You're going to have some surprises, you're going to have some challenges and all that, but you have to continue to walk by faith and not by sight. And that's much easier to say than to do, much easier. And so the purpose of this podcast is to showcase others like us who've
Hmm.
gone through some really, really scary times, some dark, dark moments. And it's amazing, as you just said, once you just kind of step back and let God take control, he can take you out of that darkness, like that circle, and bring you back into the light. I just had a chance to speak to a church in St. Louis, right outside of St. Louis.
Hmm.
Church on the Rock. I love the name
Yes.
of that, Church on the Rock. And I had a chance to speak to their congregation. It was just an amazing experience. And we were talking about this giant called waiting, you know? So what I'm doing in the book is I'm talking about these various giants, these Goliaths, these things that are really, really scary. And like David, who looked up at Goliath and said, my God is bigger, better, stronger, right? This is what we're saying. We're saying to folks who are going through these moments, be encouraged. There are folks like us out here who face these Goliaths, right? And this one called waiting is a big giant. It is a Goliath, because think about all the things that have to happen between where you are today and
Hmm.
where God wants to take you.
Hmm.
Right? And there's a lot of time, years can pass, and folks can get discouraged because they've been praying, they've been trying to do the right things, right? They're trying to keep their families together, like you, trying to do all the right things, but you have to wait for God to move people and circumstances around so he can answer your prayer. But that's really tough. And so, Dennis, I just admire you and Donna and Cameron and Sydney. I mean, you all have done just an incredible job over a long period of time. Now, I have to ask you, how many times have y'all moved?
So I have moved 14 times. Donna has moved 6. And the first 7 moves, 8 moves were actually before getting married. It was like bam, bam, bam. You remember those days, Joe.
Oh, yeah.
You didn't get
Mhm.
promoted. And then, in 12 months or so, you thought that, life was over. So really, true to that, I was promoted at Quaker every year. I was there for 7.5 years, and I think I had 7 promotions. And
Mhm.
each of those involved relocation. Now, today we would think more about the efficiency and the scalability of this kind of a career, and so we don't move people like we used to. But back then, it was expected to move if you were in the sales organization, and
Absolutely.
you really couldn't move up if you didn't. And
Right.
by the way, if you weren't asked to move, then your career really was not going anywhere.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was interesting. But you just said something, Jones, that I think bears repeating, and that is when God is working on us,
Hmm.
he's doing it in concert with someone else.
Hmm.
And so, because what I want today is what I want, it may not be in the plan because there are these other tentacles that he's working on. He's got to move people and places and things, and he's got to create the right environment for your success.
Hmm.
A lot of times, and I certainly was guilty of this, and I see this in a lot of our young people today. We want to skip the adversity
Yeah.
to get to the reward.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes, that's not in your best interest because you get what you want, but then you can't really handle it.
That's right.
So when you're young, you don't want to hear that. But I can say now at this point, I'll be I'll be a ripe age on Thursday of this week.
Yeah, yeah. Happy
I,
birthday.
I can remember the enthusiasm for getting to that next level, that next rung, that next thing.
Yeah.
And as I sit here today, there is not a point in my career where what I experienced, adversity, success, rewards, recognition, where all of those things weren't necessary to become the leader that I am today. And so my advice to everyone in the midst of a storm is to give God time to
Amen.
do what he does.
That's right.
To believe that he will deliver you to that place that you want to be when it is the right time for you to be there.
That's right. That's right. That's right. You know, you said something that's really powerful too. So, you know, I'm in academia, so I'm seeing young students, undergrads, MBAs, PhDs, even they're trying to get their careers started and all. And I read something recently that really speaks to this. You know, I talk a lot about crawl, walk, run, right? You got to crawl, walk, run. Recently, I read the story talking about infants who were just so quick that they almost skip the crawling phase. So they'll start, they'll start crawling, and then all of a sudden they stand up and they're walking, and they just, for the most part, skip that crawling stage. But what these researchers found was that they weren't as strong because they didn't go through the crawling stage. That crawling stage, that one where we're waiting, you're developing, you're getting muscles, you're getting, you're going through that whole developing process. And to your point, a lot of our folks leaving colleges, they want to go straight to running.
Absolutely. Right. And listen, we were there too. I get it.
We were. That's right.
I get it. But that's not really it is so counterintuitive today to think about what we needed to get to where we are.
Yeah.
And yet, had God allowed me to use my logic, I might have gotten to a place earlier, but the outcome would not have been what it is today.
That's
I would not have been ready, would not have been mature, would not have been resilient, would not have been capable of embracing the success in a manner that I think bespeaks the most appropriate way to do so.
That's right.
So I'm very thankful, for all of that adversity, for all of those challenges, all of those sleepless nights. I can just tell you that they have built me into the person. They built my family to have this resiliency and to understand that, it is about the journey. Yeah. It is not about the outcome. The outcome is important, but the journey is even more important because that's where you learn, that's where you get prepared, and that's where you ensure that once you get to that place that looks like success, you can handle it.
Amen. That's right. That's good. That's good. Now, you've got a strong faith because of your mom and your grandmom. I know that about you. I know, especially your grandmother. You used to tell me about your grandmother so much. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about that impact that your grandmother had on you and your faith in particular?
Sure. So my grandmother and grandfather, it's interesting. We lost my grandmother last April. So it'll be a year, April 4th. Yeah. And she was 6 months from being 105 years old. She was still very, very aware, very communicative, very lucid at her death. Her memory was slipping. But here's a woman that was, for all practical purposes, 105 years old, had been with me for 62 years. I don't recall ever seeing her upset or sad or disappointed. She was such a woman of faith that I believe she recognized that whatever happened was God's will and that it was her responsibility to accept, to move forward, and to do so by faith, not expecting any outcome other than what God directed her to do. She was always about learning, about continuing to grow and develop. And so I talk about my grandmother extensively all the time. My grandfather at the time was a preacher, and so he really set the foundation for service to others, for community engagement, for empathetic spirit that was willing to be supportive and helpful to those that required or needed some sort of support. And so that became the foundation for me. He died when I was 16. And so my grandmother, who really was overshadowed by him, as I now reflect on her life and legacy, had an even greater impact on me because of the amount of time that we had together. And she taught me to be a student of everything, a continuous learner, deeply rooted in faith, confident and supportive of others. Just an amazing woman. It's almost difficult still to even talk about her without becoming emotional, because she had such an impact on me and thousands of others across the Mid-South as part of their legacy, Christian faith, and their evangelism across the South. Yeah. So I love her, I miss her, wish she was still here. My mom as well, both powerful influences. My mom was a teacher, and she was a single mom back in the 60s. And of course, being a single mom then wasn't like being a single mom now. That was really shunned and looked down upon, and yet the circumstances were beyond her control. And so I learned from her to get up, pull my pants up, and to put one foot in front of the other every single day. Yeah. So I think collectively with my grandfather, my grandmother, my mother, and many, many other family friends and church members, I was really supported and taught amazing things about faith and the importance of having that as part of your foundation in life.
Amen. Yep. I begin the book about building on your foundation. Exactly that. We've been amazingly blessed in this area because we've had parents that have really influenced us. And I think about those people who may be in broken homes. They may not have a father around. They may not have a mother around, or a grandmother or a grandfather. And to encourage them, what would you say to those folks about finding their foundation?
Well, I'll tell you, Jones, we talk about our Goliath. I learned about my biological dad at the age of 20. And it was the first time that I knew he existed, and it was kind of haphazard the way I found out about it. My mom had planned to tell me, but unfortunately for her and for me, I learned about it before she was able to do so. I immediately met him. And for about the next 17 or 18 years, we would have phone conversations. We'd talk about getting together, but we never really did. We saw each other a couple of times, and eventually I became bored and disenchanted and disappointed by that. He died in 2005. And before he died, I had really written off that relationship. But in 2005, I learned that I had siblings. And this past October,
I love this.
This past October, I met my siblings for the first time. We have become famous friends. Yes. I love them as though I grew up with them. And what's really interesting, Jones, is although my father and I never developed the bond and the relationship that you want, that I have with my son, that you have with your son, with your children, he actually died on my birthday. And so although in life, he was never in a position or chose not to engage with me as I had wanted, we will forever be sealed. And when our families think about him, they will think about me, because his last day on this earth was my birthday. And now that I'm getting to know my siblings and we talk about all of these things, there was never a paternity question. I just think that it was a heavy thing for him at that point in his life. And so it just never happened. But I can tell you today, I have 5 siblings. Yeah. And the blessings of God waiting 40 years later to really get that nurturing, that support, those relationships. Yeah. And they look at me now because they say that I look more and act more like our dad than any of them ever did. I catch them staring at me, Jones, and they'll say, I know you see me staring at you, but it feels like dad is sitting right here next to me. So it's an amazing resemblance, and it just shows you that God moves in his own time, at his own pace. And I wanted that relationship so badly back in 1980, but it wasn't meant to be. And in 1998, I wrote that relationship off. And in 2005, my dad died. And so at that point, I said, well, I guess I'll never know who he was and much about the family. And here we are in 2023, where my brother and my sisters and I and their children are bringing our families together and celebrating the relationships that we will have as we move forward. Yeah. So again, it's one of those Goliaths that it's a little bit out of the context of the adversity from my professional life, but it just goes to show you that God does these things in his own time. That's and right. So I'm so thankful to have them in my life today.
Look at God. Look at God. Wow, what an encouraging story. I know we could do this for hours. And trust me, Dennis and I have spent hours talking about it.
So, but we haven't had any debates today.
Right, that's right.
That's the thing. No debate. No debate.
Oh, man, I just love you. I just appreciate you so much. And I appreciate your time to really encourage others on Victory Groove. Thank you so much. Please give Donna and the kids my wonderful love. Fern sends her regards, and we'll connect again real soon.
Dr. Jones, please tell Fern I said hello. In fact, give Fern a big hug and a kiss. All the kids. And let me commend you. You have been inspirational by your success in support of others in everything you've done. You did it in the corporate world, you did it in academia, and now you're doing it from this podcast basis where you have a voice to tell stories, to encourage others, and to be supportive. And I know God has got to be awfully proud of you for the work that you and Fern and your family, the work that you're doing and the way that you're inspired. I'm inspired every time that I look and see something that Dr. Jones is doing, a new book, a new speaking opportunity, a new career opportunity. Jones, you're an amazing friend. I love you. I love your family. Boy, this is great.
Yeah, thank you, brother. Thank you so much. God he will continue to bless you. 1 Chronicles 4:10. He will continue to bless you. Lord, we just thank you for this wonderful time we had. Oh, God, thank you. Yeah, we ask that you bless this message, every word, every intention, Father, and that this will go out to lots of folks who really need this level of encouragement, to really face the adversity and to find your strength in adversity. We want to encourage you all, keep the faith, walk by faith, not by sight, and always remember, we already have the victory. We just need to get our groove back.